too often when we talk about marijuana, its uses or laws and the legalization of it. Whether in the United States or in Ecuador, where I live, there's a tendency to focus exclusively on marijuana to the exclusion of hemp. But it's the same plant. And I think that's really a mistake for at least for three reasons, if not 1,000 other reasons. But one is because if we want to understand why marijuana was prohibited in the first place, if we want to understand what we're going back and repealing and the reasons and the motivations historically for prohibition of marijuana, we can't do that without including him in the conversation. So it's important. Secondly, by focusing exclusively on marijuana, a regulatory framework is adopted which excludes and prejudices hemp. So, for example, there's all this focus on the leaf, on the flowers of the plant, how much THC it has, how low in THC it has to be, um, how it's classified as one branch or another branch, depending on how much THC there is. But this regulatory framework in itself is prejudicial to hemp because we should also be talking about the leaves, the stalks, the stems, all the other parts of the plant which are used and have been used for thousands of years. Thirdly, by focusing almost exclusively on marijuana and leaving hemp out of the conversation, needs to be part of, not a separate conversation, but part of the same conversation. We're really ignoring what is the elephant in the room, which is the hemp's ability to solve the environmental crisis through things like biofuel, bioplastic, and all the other uses which are biodegradable. We don't need to cut down trees. We can plant hemp. And on this last note about the environmentalism, I think it's really ironic that those that call for sustainable development, those that call for us to have a greener world, that even would mandate it and obligate us to move in that direction with, make your house green. Those that would call for this do so knowing full well that hemp is the answer and the free market would take care of the environmentalism if there was just if it were to be allowed to grow hemp freely and abundantly, no licensing. I mean, governments can do this sort of thing in cases of emergency. We saw how they briefly made hemp legal once again during World War II, hemp for victory because they needed it. It was so important for the war effort. And we really, but then after the war, the hemp industry receded again into oblivion and obscurity. But if governments really believe that we're facing an existential threat from climate change and from using fossil fuels, then they could say, okay, everybody plant hemp. We want to do it. And that's how our country was started, where there was a law for the first colonists that they were required to buy hemp and send so much across the ocean to King George, who were still a colony of England. That was the first cannabis law requiring the colonists grow hemp. So, because hemp sequesters all the bad stuff in the soil and in the air, and so it's the answer. So those that are really pushing for this kind of deep green agenda and sustainable development and Agenda 21, we know it's all garbage, but if they were really serious about their environmentalism, they say, okay, just free, unfettered access to hemp, just plant, 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 and let the free market take care of the environmentalism. And ultimately, the environmental crisis we're facing, I do agree, we're facing an environmental crisis. It's even more important than, whether a high school kid has a doobie in Ecuador. So, I'm not one of those people that thinks that marijuana should just be free and unregulated and distributed. Um, I'm just saying that the way that this debate, and you see this really in Ecuador too, and all of Latin America, there's an exclusive focus on marijuana, on the psychedelic cannabis, psychoactive cannabis, I should say, to the exclusion, so much to the exclusion of the industrial side of it that most people, if you ask them, they don't even know what hemp is.